to Phuket, Tokyo, and Penang for our panel on shophouses, ryokans, and villas, surviving the storm and facing the future. We have from Penang, Chris Ong, who's founder for Georgetown Heritage Hotels. We have Aya Aso, who's the founder of CEO of Savvy Collective, co-founder and CEO of Perk Up Japan. And we have Kun Kitisak, I'm not going to say his last name, Kun Kitisak, CEO of Montara Hospitality Group. All right. Hello, everyone. Good to see
Hello.
you.
สวัสดีครับ
Sawadee ka. Hobo,
Hello.
Chris.
Oh.
Konnichiwa, Aya. All right, so again,
Konnichiwa.
we're going to break this discussion into three parts. So we're going to start off with BC, before COVID, right? We all wish before COVID. Kit and Chris, you're both from family businesses, or family-like in Chris's case. And so Kit with luxury villas and residences, and Chris with shop houses. So let's start with Kit first. So let's go to Tristara. Beautiful, beautiful resort. Like everybody who's been there absolutely falls in love with it. So Kit, you said that no more than 10% of your business was domestic, BC, and your top three markets were UK, Hong Kong, and Germany. So you really had to do a massive, massive pivot.
Yes, that's right.
All right. Okay, so now we go to Chris. I love your background with your Peranakan antiques. Beautiful. So 7 terraces, which is part of your collection. What percentage of your business was domestic, Chris, and which were your top 3 markets?
20%, up to 20% was domestic. And top 3 markets were Australia, UK, and Singapore.
Okay, I just want to get some context, to see what a massive pivot you guys had to make, and we'll get into how you both survived during COVID. But now let's get to Aya. And is that a virtual background or a real background? I never know in Japan. So Aya is a co-founder of WiT Japan and North Asia. Aya, I mean, Japan is full of family businesses, right? Especially among the ryokans. And we've actually featured ryokan owners in our Tokyo event. So let's introduce 2 of them here with a couple of images. So one is Hidemi Hasegawa from Kaikaki Onsen. And then we have Ippei Ichijo from Unishi Ichijo. And this is a wonderful slide. It's like shows us before and after. So Aya, how have our friends fared during COVID? Did they quickly have to pivot back to domestic, and how hard was it?
Okay, I'm sure that some of you who attended the WIT Tokyo a couple of years ago have remembered that these are the 2, the speakers who are wearing the kimono when they're speaking on the stage. And I'm representing those 2 ryokans because this is actually the very first day of Golden Week, although Japan is going into the 3rd lockdown right now. But I'll explain you why that those 2 are actually very busy at the hotel, operating the hotels right now. And to tell you how they were doing before COVID, that first of all, the lady, the housekeeper, the innkeeper, Kaikake, she said that she had about 5% of inbound market versus 95% were domestic. And you probably will surprised that in those Ichijo ryokan, which had actually less than 2% inbound versus 98% was domestic. So they were quite well maintained in the domestic market even during the COVID.
Okay, so that huge domestic base sort of stood them really, really well. So we go to Chris now. And Chris, was there anything you did that stood you well in the pandemic? Something that on hindsight you're kind of glad you did and which came in unexpectedly handy, Chris?
I think having a diversified, business. As you know, you've got the F&B, and you also have the antique business, the merchandise business, was surprisingly came as a bonus, because when you don't have domestic and interstate travel, I was actually selling a lot of furniture and selling design services. So that was a surprising outcome.
So your passion and hobby kind of stood you in
Yes.
good stead unexpectedly.
I mean,
Okay.
having a 75-year-old cabinet maker on staff turned out to be one of our best decisions.
All right. And Kit too, you told me about your wellness project, the Tree Vananda, and I'm going to show a couple of images. And your family had planned this in 2019, and you went ahead with the project. I mean, Tree Vananda, I understand it means forest of lasting happiness. I mean, like what a beautiful name. So tell us how that kind of helped you stay the course through the Trisara story.
Right. Trivananda really is a powerful vision that the whole team is now working very hard to realize. I think when we're stuck in a dark tunnel, like during a pandemic, it's very easy to lose sight of who you are, what you're trying to do. But having a very strong vision of what everyone can work towards is something that has helped us to stay the course. And also with the pandemic, I believe that now wellness is top of everyone's mind. Early on, a lot of people realized that you cannot buy health with wealth. There's has been no cure, and so really the way to be resilient personally is to ensure that that you have a strong well-being individually. So it's something that really helped us to stay the course, to focus the team, give everyone a sense of purpose, something to work towards.
Right. And Chris, when I spoke to you, I mean, you were quite candid about it, and then you said it's a bit of a fumble in the dark, but at least it is better than doing nothing. So food delivery, selling antiques, tell us give us one thing that you did other than hiring that 75-year-old, carver that turned out to be a smart move.
Well, when you think about the F&B business, we were an event space, a destination for events. So when you don't have, you're not allowed to host events, we had to think out of the box. So we hosted smaller events. I mean, I created, for example, tours around the hotel and told stories about building of the hotel, and that became quite successful in terms of leveraging the local domestic domestic guests into finding our hotel actually for the first time. So the tours led to functions and built up loyalty with the guests. That's one area, and the other area was I thought we've got so many people in the F&B not doing very much, so I decided food delivery for a high-end restaurant is not really that viable. So we decided to take our restaurant out to you. So having outside catering became a very interesting and reasonably successful part of the business now. So we've diversified into a lot of different areas that's related to what we're doing.
Yeah, COVID has certainly sort of forced us to be a lot more creative. And Aya, this is interesting. Like you're starting 2 new companies during COVID, which is very brave. So tell us how you're reimagining your hospitality experience based on lessons learned from COVID. Because I've heard like lots of interesting things happening in Japan around subscription models coming around vacations and second homes, for example. Can you tell us some of
Yes,
what you're trying to do in that space?
Sure. Well, about this time of the year last year, my first awareness was oh my gosh, we have to fill this large inventory of the hotels and how we're going to do it. And then it is the very first time that the Japan has starting to do shifting their workplace into remote work and working at a home. And this became a big trend. And even the prime minister started talking about the remote work and the workation in his speeches. And that actually have created a lot of new way of using vacant hotels, and that was very new and also a rapid needs of the market. And then about later of the year, actually we founded a company called Perk Up with the team who have been doing sharing economy business. You probably have heard, and also we had a speaker at the WIT some years ago from Space Market, and
Yeah, I
who's
remember them.
renting us, yes, renting the spaces and matching with the market. And I actually founded the company with one of the founder of this company, and we started to create sort of a matching platform business for the remote workers and the hotels. But about in January, actually, a couple of months ago, we actually pivoted the business quickly to the workation context, and now we are in preparation of launching the matching site called coworkation.com. And this is actually comes from my second awareness, which is that many Japanese workers have been doing this remote work for a long time, and working alone at home. And people are losing their motivation at work, and also companies are actually losing their engagement with the people who's working for them. And they are very urged to have people, bring people back together and do some workshops and meetings together face to face and in real meeting space. And I actually, we actually thought that the meeting place now, as a workplace became a remote work locations, this meeting place could be anywhere in Japan, and anywhere doesn't have to be an office. It could be a meeting room in the resort office, or it could be outside and being around the fireplace and so forth. So I thought, with long experience in my resort and ryokan operation, I thought this is a very great and only chance, paradise chance, that to actually change the market mix and bring in the corporate retreat and outing into this the local resort and the ryokan.
Well,
So this is
it's so
my new business
enterprising.
for
Yeah,
the distributed workplace.
it's so enterprising of you to tap into this, what is going to be a massive change in the Japanese work culture, which is actually very, very entrenched, right? But COVID has just absolutely disrupted that. So, so let's go to, Kit there. I think you also did food delivery. Say one thing that you did well, that made you stronger as a hotel group.
I think during COVID, actually, I think just the fact that we stayed open throughout the whole time, no matter what happened, I think that actually helped us to become stronger. Initially, even when we had sub-district lockdown in Phuket, we stayed open. Our team volunteered to stay on property to take care of our villa owners and local guests. And actually, I think that will help us in the long run as a brand. Hermione mentioned in the previous presentation that brand has to be safety for consumer. And I think for us to keep open and to be able to provide that kind of sense of safety, establish that sense of trust with the customers that we have, even though we have much fewer of them, but to have much deeper level of trust and deeper level of engagement will make us a stronger brand. It also helps us, give us an opportunity to really develop the domestic market. In the past, as you mentioned, Trisara only had around 10% or less than 10% of customers from Thailand. Going forward, I think we all recognize that a strong domestic market is critical for being resilient, and being open throughout this whole time is something that will has already helped us to establish a strong relationship with the customer in Thailand. Right. Finally, just having fewer customers but deeper engagement with them. we actually sent someone to be based in Bangkok to have handle the guests, hold their hands throughout the whole booking and travel process. And that's resulted in actually great additional services, food delivery. We saw a much larger number of returning guests, and some of them now have decided to buy a villa at Trisara and even at our new project, Trivananda. So
Okay.
I think, yeah, just
So
staying
really,
open and
really,
keeping
yeah,
at it.
building up your local market, diversifying, and not be so reliant on inbound. And I'm sure, Chris, you're thinking about that too. I mean, you started out building your group around heritage, which may be popular with foreign travelers, but maybe not so much domestic, right? So given the AC world, are you going to be adjusting your product for local and regional tastes first? Like, should you just completely pivot your product?
No, I think there's a reason for locals to learn about their culture as well. So I think what we've been trying to do is, as like Kit said, getting more engagement with locals. We had very little engagement previously, as we were too busy dealing with travelers anyway. But what I'm doing is creating events and having a more present social media, so that when AC, we will have a much more rounded business. I think it'll be a much better business going forward. AC.
Okay. How do you think, coming up to the Olympics, there was a big move by government to boost Japanese inbound, right? And then a lot of ryokans came in and say, okay, we're going to try and get some of that foreign business. Do you think this period will make them rethink and they will say, wow, inbound, too much trouble, let me go back to kind of fully domestic?
Well, to be honest, I think it was really a wake-up call for most of the innkeepers in Japan that it's too much to depend on the new market inbound. But if you flip back, it is true that there's 80% of the travel industry in Japan is enjoying the domestic market already. And I think a lot of the ryokans and hotel owners and operators will be going back to the domestic market for a while, until 1 or 2 years that the inbound tourism are fully coming back to Japan after the boundaries open.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up this panel. Like, for me, every story has to have an ending. And here are a couple of closing lines from novels that I have read, okay? So The Gift of Rain by Tan Tuan Eng, set in Penang. The last closing line, Chris, it reads, I prayed that the gods that protected Penang, the island of Penang, and watched over its people should always maintain their unflagging vigilance. And from Memoirs of a Geisha, Arthur Golden, he said, the last line, whatever our struggles and triumphs, however we may suffer them, all too soon they bleed into a wash, just like watery ink on paper. So I'm inviting you guys to write the closing line to your COVID story. So let's begin with Chris. What's your closing line?
I think I'm much more practical and less poetic there. Mine would be failure is not an option. And the Chinese saying would be Ma Sei, Lok De Hang, which means that we adjust, we just need to get there.
Okay. Kit?
I would say to be your own light. I think now a lot of people, we talk about light is at the end of the tunnel, but vaccinations sometimes come late and sometimes viruses mutate. But along the way, if we can create sense of purpose and positivity for people around us, then we can each be our own source of light and hopefully help one another keep moving forward. So be your own light and be our own light would be the closing line.
Okay, and Aya, what's your closing line?
Well, as everybody knows, Japan is a country with the second most climate disaster. And we all know that there's no unstoppable rain. And after the rain comes fair weather.
Okay, so here we go. Failure is not an option for Chris. To be your own light from Kun Kit. And after the rain comes good weather. So thank you so much for joining me in this panel. Thank you so much, Chris,
Thank you.
Kit, and Aya. Thank you.